Howdy, of you delicious people. I'm here today to review One Punch Man Season 2. Ultimately, I'm going to tell you exactly where you can go to ultimately see this show in English dubbed for absolutely free. I'm also going to mention two sites for you to go and see this. I'm also going to talk about Season 2 in a very cryptic-like sense, give you a double 5-time count, and then go into spoiler sense. So, ultimately, you can see One Punch Man Season 2 for absolutely free on these two websites that are currently available to the second of this recording. Anime Prime. Anime, A-N-I-M-E, and then Prime, P-R-I-M-E. That is a site that is currently working right now to where you can see One Punch Man Season 2 for absolutely free. You can see it dubbed in English. There is also another site that I think is the currently updated version of that. It is called Anime BOGO. Anime, A-N-I-M-E, and then BOGO, B-O-G-O. And you can see this anime, again, in English for absolutely free. It's free with ads in between the episodes, and you can go into both of these websites and watch One Punch Man Season 2 in English for absolutely free. If you've never seen the first season of One Punch Man, you need to go out of your way. You need to run, not walk, to go and see One Punch Man Season 1. Because ultimately, what I'm going to be talking about here might not help you understand what One Punch Man is, because I'm ultimately just going to talk about the second season. I believe I did at some point maybe have One Punch Man Season 2 on review on this channel, but I'm not exactly sure. More than likely, I probably got rid of it because I just don't know if I have it anymore. But man, was that first season really great. So, how did I feel about Season 2 in a very cryptic-like sense? Well, One Punch Man Season 2, One Punch Man is a basically non-existent character in his own show. Basically, it heavily ties on otherwise several other different heroes. It kind of goes into the very much B list of any other hero that exists in this world. Maybe not people that might be 100% be familiar from Season 1. It seems like they kind of add a ton of just random Ash-like heroes into this second season, and then just have to come up with stories for why they're here. They also have it to where, like this, the execution for episode to episode, like, it feels like there is one cohesive story, where in the first season, I feel like they just kind of plop down monsters per episode to episode to episode to episode, and like just to have One Punch Man eventually, of course, take them down. This one has a overall like main goal in this season, which I do actually enjoy much more so than the execution of the very first season, because I think it actually makes much more sense. I think in the first season, like I kind of would have liked this. I kind of would have liked the second season story in the first season, but then I'd also like the first season to have been the second season, bizarrely enough. But then again, like, I would have liked One Punch Man to have an origin story in the first season, and this and that. Anyway, so reasonably, this show is honestly not as funny as the first original season. It's very dry. It's a very dry season compared to the first. Like, I would just be going through this season and just consistently laughing through the first season. Like, in the second season, I was just kind of like, man, this is so dry. It's like it kind of turns into almost any anime that you've ever seen with heroes um being the focus of how to do a show. I did like what they were doing with the story of this. I think basically having a much more villain regime in this episode kind of does make a lot more sense than what they did in the first season. I feels like there was a better villain showcase in this show. I thought that there was reasonably some interesting visual additions to this season than past. But I think there was some stuff that kind of fell really, really flat. There was a lot of stuff that I like from start to finish. Season one of One Punch Man, I thoroughly loved and enjoyed. Second season, there was a lot of episodes where I honestly just really didn't care. There was a lot of episodes where I was just kind of like, God, this is boring, or it feels like filler. I honestly wish that One Punch Man could have really, done something to downgrade his power, to just kind of come up with some kind of schemes to be able to downplay his power, or ultimately he could have been with the least powerful heroes and just been really good friends with them, instead of having them just being left to their own devices in this season. A lot of times people were easily or desperately swayed to turn to the dark side into this episode because a lot of people did not have good enough powers, or a lot of times they realized that they were way outmatched than one other person that just. So I think a lot of people were easily swayed to turn to the dark side in this season. I feel like there were too many times where I think certain characters were way overly showcased. I think there was a lot of times when One Punch Man's story in this story was the probably the most boringest thing of the entire show. Which again, if you're gonna have a person on the title of your screen, make him do at least something that I like would be interested in. Like One Punch Man through this entire season did the least interesting thing. I don't know why that is. I don't know why you had to basically kill the most important character of your show by like you might as well just have renamed this something else and just put like One Punch Man as just a character in this show. You must have called it a spin-off or something like that. It's kind of like it feels like clickbait. It feels very much like One Punch Man is a clickbaiting thing because I think a lot of times people that worked on the show realize how successful the first season was and how much people over time loved it. Uh, that's what I kind of feel like this second season is, just based on just one thing, and that's like One Punch Man's involvement. That is all. Again, there is a really good story in this. There is some stuff that I did love and enjoy about this season. I wish that it just would have been a little bit more on the comedic side. I wish that it would have been very much more like, if you're gonna give me a B or C hero, don't make that hero viciously bland. like like it's either like somebody that I have already seen them fight plenty of other times, or it's some bland hero that ultimately was just kind of like, why should I invest in this person? Like they are kind of very bland to me, or it feels like they were trying to have an execution of like, hey guys, hey, this anime show is popular, so let's grab this visual from here and let's plop it down on One Punch Man. It doesn't quite feel like this season doesn't really quite feel all that from a visual standpoint. At some points, some small points, it doesn't really feel like some stuff is feeling original to me. It just kind of feels like people were fans of other animes, so they just kind of like uh, grabbed visuals from here and there and then just plopped them down on this thing. Um, there was stuff that I liked about this story, but then again, there was stuff that like could have been better, could have been a lot just better. So I, because I didn't go into this season like feeling as like yay as I did watching it. It was just kind of like there was some times where I just wanted to have it on and as background noise because that's just how just like I just it's like another episode or another thing of this where I know it's not going to go anywhere. Um, just felt like so disappointing to me at points in time. Um, it feels like they were very much a rush instead of really taking their time to really implement things. Like how um, every episode had a feel of they took the time to figure out where things were going and how they're going to plop down each episode. This second season, from how much time between seasons, like this season felt very rushed out compared to the first season. Like this season was just like just shove this all out there. And like I think a lot of stuff was taking a lot more time than probably should have, but I guess it is what it is. So, but I want to say that this is still a solid, good season. But it's just not as good as most of the first season. And anyways, like I don't know, there could be a lot of debate about this. A lot of people would say it was better, and I couldn't argue against that point either. Some people could have said it was just as good, and I can't argue that as well. Um, or I can't argue against that as well, but I don't know. I just kind of left, just kind of just like, eh, just compared to the first season. This was such a dry season. There's never a one time where I was like, yeah, like this is like there's some visually interesting things here, but other than that, it's like, yeah, like this is disappointing. But I liked it. There were some things that I liked. There's some things that I got from this that I liked, but probably recently when looking at my like other superhero anime things going on, like My Hero Academia, or kind of several other things, like I think I would be much more interested in really going back into watching My Hero Academia than waiting for a third season of this to eventually come down the pipeline, because I think that'll just really and honestly and truly just suffer the longer it goes. More than likely, One Punch Man might not even be an existing thing in this show in the third season. Maybe he's just gonna leave and never come back, and then we're gonna consistently keep calling this One Punch Man, and it's gonna be somebody else that's gonna have to be One Punch Man, or maybe some kind of different disciples of One Punch Man, some kind of different variations of One Punch Man, because that's what it feels like this season brought to us. Where you have people that are almost just as powerful as One Punch Man, that could basically take his moniker and this and that in this season. Is yeah, that's kind of where we're going to. So yeah, that's just kind of how I felt about this season in a very generic like sense, in a very cryptic like sense. Now I think it's about that time to go into this show in a very spoiler like sense, because a lot of people might want to hear what is going on with this show regardless. You want to just hear the sounds of my voice, and that's completely okay. So let's go on our way to do spoilers about this show. So let's go into a double five time count. Um, Again, there might be polar opposite opinions about this show. There might be like very much different sides of the sword for anybody to debate about this show being good, being bad, being sad about the way of which that this show kind of seemed to 100% change its tune. But I'm assuming probably in season 3, if they do eventually get to that, waiting for probably who knows how long for another season to come down somewhere down the pipeline. I'm wondering if they're going to realize to get back into the story with One Punch Man. It's just like yeah, I get it that this character is like quickly like the uh like, well, hey, like you gotta have somebody that actually struggles to fight people instead of One Punch Man that really doesn't have to. So, spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this show. So, I wanna kind of make it really obvious that it's kind of like I feel kind of 50-50 about this, but it's probably like 50-50, probably much more so on an almost negative side than positive, because like reasonably like this story, the way they executed this story was the only real true like saving point of this show. Reasonably, because that's all they could do was come up with a much more intriguing story, because if they didn't have a good enough story, man, with this show would have just tanked, would have been awful. So we we go into this, and right off the gate, we have it to where there is a like mentioning where One Punch Man is still in the standings of being a hero, and we have One Punch Man's trusty sidekick, the Cyborg, which is the Cyborg Genos, I believe is, or I'm probably not even going to even pronounce his name correctly. The Cyborg, the completely artificial life form that One Punch Man has. He really goes out of his way in this season to be much more of a showcasing. Like he's basically One Punch Man in this entire season. He has more star power in this season to be showcased than One Punch Man does. It's ridiculous, and I don't get it. So we have it to where there is this guy called King, and he ultimately is pointed out to have this fight with this big, huge robotic thing that wants to test King's powers. Because nobody has really ever actually seen him actually use his powers. And this King guy has a scar on his face, and ultimately, like, I guess he could seem like a menacing thing or menacing character or this and that. And One Punch Man and his sidekick are both kind of there watching along. And ultimately King mentions that he's gonna go to the bathroom. I'm like, okay, so I guess he's gonna like, sure, just get your like run to the bathroom, change into your superhero outfit, and then probably take this guy down, right? No, this guy hides in the bathroom because he's a fraud. He's a sham. He's not really a superhero at all. Reasonably, every single time he's been just taking credit for everybody else who's been decking superheroes. And like I was like, oh, okay, this is really like an interesting thing to have this character here that has just been a fraud and just been at the right place uh, at the wrong times all the time. Right place meaning he takes the credit, but like he's not the actual person, so he's there at the wrong time. But anyways, we have to where One Punch Man's sidekick just starts decking this guy. He just starts decking this guy that was supposed to challenge King. All the while, King eventually leaves to go to his home to hide away from this challenge. And One Punch Man follows him to this home and ultimately says, hey, I hear you're really powerful. Why did you duck away from that fight? It's hey, I just wanted to ask you why. And I also hey, it looks like you have some pretty cool video games here. And basically, just One Punch Man and this guy just continue to play video games with one another while there's a fight going on somewhere out in the world with One Punch Man's sidekick and this giant mecha thing or robot thing that was ultimately going to kill people per every 10 minutes. And I'm like, are you serious right now? I'm like, here's a person that threatened people's life, and One Punch Man just does not care. But we have it to where supposedly monsters are much more so on a muck this season than they probably ever were. It seems like it gets to the point in this season where the monsters are overwhelming the heroes. And it's very interesting to see the huge dissection of different kind of section of hero levels and stuff like that, to where you have like the A squad, the B squad, the C squad, and stuff like that, but they're like lettered differently. You have like the S squad that is kind of the very much like supremacist like heroes, and then you have these A squads and B squads and C squads and stuff like that. You basically have people with absolutely no power that are just kind of have consistently just been in the news, saving people, like saving cats from a tree, and ultimately, so they get some kind of ranking in this hero system because they are just very much having a will to survive. Which I think One Punch Man should have honestly been really put with the least powerful heroes, Moomin Rider or something like that. Like he really should have been really stuck with Moomin Rider, because it seems like Moomin Rider is just a person that he doesn't have any power, but man, is he just his he is the person that is willing to do the sacrifice play. He his pride is basically his greatest if he doesn't have a power, his pride is his power, that he just goes into things without thinking. He goes in to help people without thinking about the consequences of him not exactly being this powerful character. Uh, I really enjoy Moomin Rider, and I like that they didn't forget about him. I liked that they kind of very scarcely but still used him in this season. Uh, I feel like they could have actually used him in an actual capacity of him kind of consistently being in the background or something along those lines. But Moomin Rider Moon Knight Rider was just kind of like a footnote of what was last season. There's a lot of more interesting things going on in this season, I guess. That you had to showcase a lot more people. You had to add in a lot more characters, which ultimately at some points I didn't quite understand, but then I also had some fun with some of these heroes being added in. Plus, we also had a hero hunter, which I actually liked. You had a hero villain that ultimately goes and seeks out all the heroes and as much as possible tries to deck them. He tries to go for the upper rungs of some of the heroes and he tries to take them out because he wants to be known as he wants to be known as a villain in some book somewhere, a top rated villain in a book, which ultimately he can't even pay for. But he ultimately consistently has this kid that has his book out and he's like watching him. Is like, oh yeah, hey, yeah, cool. This guy is consistently here. Oh, great, awesome. I can go and find him then and pick a fight with him. Great. Um, that villain that villain that was mainly showcased in this season. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this character. I really liked this for it kind of being the polar opposite. If we have One Punch Man that is consistently just like decking every hero or every villain in the first season, in the second season we have a villain that is decking all of the heroes. So in this season we have a very much interesting showcasing of heroes that we've probably never heard of before. We ultimately have heroes like Tank Top Master. We have a bunch of like muscle bound, freakish looking guys that all wear tank tops, and that's the reason why they're like they are called like the Tank Top League or Legion or whatever. And I thought that was hilarious. Like I thought that was pretty funny. I'm like all just a ton of muscle bound guys that are just strong enough to try to go up against um, this hero hunter because if we basically had a showing of some very top tier heroes for this hero hunter to go up against and just to completely just have an entire room of heroes that he's just cleaning house with was kind of just fun to watch. But then after that we got to really see right away him like stress test his power with a big muscular guy. But then again, we also have it to where, like, consistently, One Punch Man is getting to see some kind of where he is in the rung of hero. And there are people from the B section of the hero list that are going to approach One Punch Man and ultimately like tell him that he needs to join their regime. And One Punch Man is just like, no, no, like I have no interest in that. Um, really, in this season, One Punch Man is so like utterly like bored about being a superhero. He's never challenged, and reasonably he is trying to find the fun in this season, and very rarely does he ever like really find anything that's 100% uh like he's trying to desperately find some kind of fun and find some kind of challenge and find some kind of like thing that he can keep um he could keep going. Well, basically we have this like Blizzard like girl who ultimately challenges One Punch Man, and I'm like, yeah, right. I'm like, go ahead, lady. So we have this Blizzard girl that is consistently like whirlwinding around frickin' One Punch Man, and he's just standing his ground, just like do 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 do. He's like just so like bored out of his mind. Or a lot of times he's just kind of like casually just talking to people and stuff like that. And then like his villains have to remind him that it's like, hey, like, shouldn't you be fighting me? Oh yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. I was just, like I was sorting my groceries section, or sorting my grocery list that I was going to do after this or something. I wish that would have been a thing to put in the story, because heaven forbid One Punch Man really has any much of any lines in this thing. Um, but yeah, of course, One Punch Man just kind of like has these kind of smaller powers than just his one punch that kind of does like barely hurt people, or ultimately One Punch Man's like cyborg friend steps in, and this Blizzard Girl is like, "Oh my God, you're with this hero?" Because the cyborg hero, um, I'm gonna just keep calling him Genos. Ultimately, he's much more powerful than One Punch Man is, in the rung of things, in the list of things. So she's like, "Oh my God, how do you know S level like characters? How do you?" And like basically that stops the fight between them. Is she just sees all these much more popular celebrity Ash like people, and then she also like notices that King is there to like get his video game back from One Punch Man, and she's like, "Oh my God, he's another S level character that's a fraud, but is still." But I actually like King. King kind of like I kind of warmed up to King because ultimately he's kind of there as the mentor to One Punch Man. He's kind of there to be the older guy that's like can tell him some morality stuff, even though he probably stole it from a manga somewhere. Um, but anyways, yeah, we have it to where One Punch Man eventually gets pushed into some martial arts contest because he heard through the grapevine that there's some hero hunter that knows martial arts. So One Punch Man gets pushed into this martial arts contest, which he basically steals the invitation from some other guy and puts on a wig to look just like him, and then proceeds to do this martial artist contest. And all the while that is going on, the city is going utterly upside down because there is this monster syndicate, there's this monster alliance that all of these monsters are all forming onto the world. And heroes are quickly getting outnumbered. Heroes are basically like sending out SOSs because they're so outnumbered that like there's no way to freaking take all the onslaught of all these villains. All the while, we definitely have, like I said, the hero hunter that is going along and try to deck some of these heroes. We ultimately have, um, after Tank Top Master, we have also this guy named Metal Bat, who ultimately is the freaking oddest, like the oddest character to be presented in this. And I was just in my mind thinking, I'm like, if this guy is called Metal Bat, shouldn't he be like fitting with his theme of like, if you're gonna call him Metal Bat, shouldn't he have like some kind of like baseball jersey? I know Japan and stuff like that all around the world, they have baseball. Like I've seen baseball anime. So like if you're gonna put a metal bat on somebody, why not have him actually like have some kind of theme going on? It would make some kind of sense. Like if you're gonna really go like with if you're gonna go with something like a metal bat, it's like how about you have the carpet match the drapes, so to speak. Like have them like have a real theme going on of being a baseball player, or being like having some kind of like athletic gear on, or something that fits the persona of this bat that is present. But anyways, I guess it's just a random thing where One Punch Man is kind of known for doing kind of very much random things. But anyways, we have to where eventually the hero hunter eventually goes and finds Metal Bat, and they almost go at it, but bizarrely this little girl chimes in between them, and she's like, hey, there's a bunch of monsters going on here. Like, we need to go home. And she's like, because like the Metal Bat had taken down like two other villains and this and that, and then went into fighting eventually to have this big gigantic centipede thing appear in the show, which was freaking amazing. This gigantic centipede like thing that is just like, what a great visual in this anime. I just wish that like some of the big gigantic monsters, I wish that they would have really had a better showcasing at times, because I feel like a lot of times it was just like, okay, when is One Punch Man gonna get here and just basically do a lot of stuff disappointingly off screen, because there's a lot of big times where a lot of big monsters showed up and then One Punch Man would just take stuff down off screen, and then you're just like, I wanted to see that fight. Like looking at the first season of One Punch Man, how you would always get a overly talkative villain that I thoroughly enjoyed. When the villains would take their time with One Punch Man, talk him to death, and hilariously, One Punch Man would always just be like, you know, I've kind of heard this a million times, and then eventually it would just get to the point where he's just tired of hearing the villain chat, or he's tired of he's tired of the villain, so he just punches the crap out of him, and he goes away. Like, man, I love that consistent portion of the very first season. And this season, you just see One Punch Man kill a lot of things off camera. You just see a head flying into frame, or you just see like disappointingly, just like a lot of times you just see some aftermath of One Punch Man killing something, and I'm like, oh man, so you don't get the time of One Punch Man really like getting his time in the sun ever in this show. He's like the most disappointing thing of this entire show. It's so freaking sad. It really is. Uh because the showcasing is of the hero hunter. So ultimately we have the little girl that is kind of holding up the hero hunter and Metal Bat. And so the hero hunter decides like, well, like, you know what, I'm not gonna, like, he's not even worth my time right now. And so he walks away. I'm like, so this guy does very much have like a certain kind of code where if there's a small kid involved, then like he won't exactly just be 100% like cold-hearted killer whatever. Like he just wants to deck all of these heroes because he has an entire even backstory into this episode. And recently I really enjoyed like having a villain with a backstory, because recently like the monsters that are all just being plopped down into the world, we finally get a big monsterish villain kind of like captain of all this big giant monster that is kind of organizing all of these monsters to go on to where they need to be. And I was like, man, you know what? I really like this whole villain-esh like thing going on here. It's really thought out. It's really interesting. I really overall like the execution of the villains in this season. There's some times where there's some kind of mixture of villains and heroes. You're not quite sure who's on what side, but there's a lot of interesting visuals going on of them, of random weird heroes or villains mixed in. Like there was this one, um, throwing in a bunch of names here. We had like a bunch of like characters that looked very much like an Iron Man-esque like villain, kind of like trouncing his way through and this and that. We had kind of Zombie Man, which is kind of an interesting visual, but he didn't do anything. We had this like gorilla like villain that I guess threw bananas at people. I don't know, but it was kind of a funny visual. Um, I think some of the visuals were probably a little bit more interesting in the first season. Um, I think that there were some fun visual choices going on in here, but I think that was kind of few or far between because some of the visuals were also kind of bland. Let's get into the martial art contest. So, One Punch Man is hiding himself as some other person wearing a wig, and reasonably, we barely ever see One Punch Man do much fighting of this. It kind of boils down to eventually them doing a couple fights and then eventually showing off this one character that, to me, honestly looks very much like a Dragon Ball Z character. I'm like, wow, this kind of feels like very this feels very lazy to have this character in here, because I kept thinking like the entire time like this guy is a Dragon Ball Z visually looking character, and you have him to have like stars on his jacket as well. I'm like, so in other words, they really wanted some character to look like Dragon Ball Z, and they really wanted to like they really wanted to cement that this guy is basically, yeah, that's who this guy is. um, so we have this guy come in here, and he is going to fight eventually to get to One Punch Man. And these two are fighting it out, and these two are both overly powerful. That One Punch Man is just kind of getting pushed away from him, and this and that. Uh, to the point where they're both so evenly matched that they have to just talk to one another and say, "Hey, what are you here for?" It's like, "I'm just here to have fun." It's like, "Oh, me too." It's like, "Hey, like, how about I just kind of do some things here and there?" Because a lot of the times that this guy was basically just like pulling his punches away from One Punch Man this entire time. Like, One Punch Man was getting a little annoyed with how many times that this guy would just consistently just like wind hit him or whatever, like the wind would hit him, and he was getting annoyed with that because ultimately he was keeping his wig on, his disguise supposedly. So eventually they get to the point of they continue to fight to where eventually the wig eventually flies off, and they realize that One Punch Man is wearing some kind of headpiece, which was a toupee that ultimately got him disqualified because you can't wear any headwear or any headpiece or whatever. And so the other guy had won. And then basically, bizarrely, One Punch Man just completely vanishes for I don't know how freaking long, for a big regime of monsters to come in and basically throw all these like purple, reddish, bluish heart things at all these martial artists because there's no other way that they can win. But the monsters want them to basically join their regime because they'll be much more powerful than they were. Some people chose to do so. Some people chose to just stand there and not do anything. But of course, the one Dragon Ball Z-esh looking character decided to fight all these monsters, getting to where eventually he has to fight the seemingly unbeatable monster. And so eventually, after that long-winded amount of thing, there's like one episode that felt very much like clickbait, where it's just like, once One Punch Man decides to go into the fight, that's when you get the credits. And then the very next episode is One Punch Man actually fighting people. And I'm like, wow, what a crappy thing to do. You have One Punch Man appear into frame and say, "Oh, I'm gonna fight now," and then credits. And then probably next week's episode was One Punch Man actually putting forth some real quasi effort, which is just like punching people off screen. You see their either heads flying or you see their whole entire body displayed, and you're just like, hooray! Just One Punch Man has done nothing in this season of worthwhile. But again, you get a whole entire story of One Punch Man just mentioning that he was just bored this entire season. And we have it to where this guy like has this Dragon Ball Z looking guy mentions to One Punch Man why do this contest. He's like, well, yeah, I just wanted the money and I just wanted to like I just thought this could be interesting, or I thought I could have fun. But he didn't learn anything from this experience. He didn't get anything out of this experience except for to maybe get a future friend out of this. The Dragon Ball Z looking guy probably owes him a life debt or whatever. So, yeah, more than likely, that's going to probably be a future friend in season 3. Anyways, eventually we have One Punch Man walking around, and he's like, oh my god, he's looking at all the carnage, he's looking at all the death and destruction, because he didn't know anything about any monsters that were all crazily going on while he was away at this martial artist tournament thing. Because again, it seems like One Punch Man really doesn't pay attention to anything. It's just like he probably like it seems like this is a sleeper character that just like takes a nap all the time off camera. I don't know. Just I don't get what he does in this season. So eventually we have it to where there is the hero hunter that is going to again be more prominently shown in this season. Eventually he gets to where he fights all these heroes, and he is almost seen like a anti-hero at some point, because realistically, like, you could almost kind of root for him. It's weird. It is. But then eventually it gets to the point where the monsters come to help said hero hunter, and like yeah, there's a lot of back and forth of just having like one like defenseless hero, and then all of a sudden a bunch of other heroes come to their aid, or villains have like some struggles, so they add in another monster, or they just have more monsters come in to ultimately have them escape, or ultimately do this and that. um, yeah, eventually it gets down to, of course, we have to have the biggest centipede ash-like monster come back, and then the cyborg sidekick character of One Punch Man has to show his show that he is worth investing in the season, and tries to take down this centipede-like character. Comes pretty close, but not close enough, because we ultimately have Hero Hunter, who's fighting his seemingly sensei, or uh, his kind of nemesis in a way, like person that kind of taught him everything he knows, but like he did it from a hero side, where this guy's doing it from a villain side, so they kind of have to have conflict, but still showcasing that this kid is basically this guy's father or whatever in some kind of sense. So martial artists fighting out and this and that, kind of in a very much like this guy, like this hero hunter to me, kind of in some ways feels like Iron Fist. Like it feels like a very like Iron Fist fighting out kind of thing in this season. Which I guess a lot of people could ultimately groan about that, because like, Iron Fist, martial arts, okay, whatever. We're kind of going down to the very bare bone basics of hero power esh like things. I don't know. I think we could have really gone and done some really extravagant ash like powers, or some like, if we're really gonna go into really showing some heavy hitter like superheroes, it could have just been really interesting to showcase somebody with interesting powers, rather than just kind of like the bare bones, just seemingly fighting out of power, like fights. Like every single fight was actually legitimately a fight. Like we never got any real we barely got any kind of real like extensive like somebody was using laser beams or explosives or something like that very much in this episode, except for the cyborg character or anybody else that seemed like him. Um, Jumping in there at any points in time just to fill up some time. It seems like the extravagant times where they had bizarrish heroes or bizarrish villains, ultimately to me kind of consistently felt like a filler time. Just because like some of the very much side characters didn't exactly go anywhere. They didn't actually do anything. They were just plopped down to just say, "Hey, I'm here," and then walk off screen eventually. It was just kind of like, that kind of sucks that this person didn't actually have anything to do with the actual story. It was just kind of to throw in a, it was just kind of throwing story in there, and I'm like, okay, where is this going? And it never went anywhere. It was like, okay, all right, just like a lot of stuff didn't go anywhere. It didn't. Um, it kind of just bizarrely like stopped at some point, and you're just like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. So we eventually have to have One Punch Man not only consistently through times, not even realize that he has consistently fought the hero hunter, and by one like small punch like kind of tossed him away. We never have a time where One Punch Man actually legitimately fights the hero hunter. He doesn't even realize who he is or that he's a thing. And I was just like, you know what, that is kind of funny. But then again, like of course One Punch Man is not going to get rid of this guy because this is the gigantic showcasing of this character, and I think more and more they're probably going to use him in every season as just like, hey, this is the villain side of things, as well as One Punch Man is the hero side of things. I would have wished that the hero hunter would have had some kind of actual like, put him in an outfit, put him in a goofy outfit. God, I was so desperate for a lot of people in this show to have a lot more goofy outfits, and it feels like they pulled back from that much more so in this season than in the first season. People in the first season wearing goofy outfits and goofy powers and weird goofy things. And this second season they kind of really severely blanded it up. And I was just kind of like, like, it could have went somewhere with this. They could have had some real goofy fun with this. They had some people barely reappear from the first season, just to have a barely showcasing, which is like, okay, that person's there, okay, um, but they really didn't do anything with that person. There was so much stuff. There's so much stuff just randomly thrown in there in this season. It's disappointing. But anyways, we go to where eventually One Punch Man has to appear, because King ultimately kind of tells him that it's like, hey, shouldn't you like be fighting today? Shouldn't you be going out looking for villains, patrolling, doing something? And like reasonably, like One Punch Man, like throughout this seemingly entire season, has left everything as far as superhero stuff to his sidekick, and he basically mentions like, oh yeah, I'm sure like my sidekick can just take care of whatever it is. And then he realizes that his sidekick could also be completely destroyed and annihilated, like how many ever times that he was in the very first season. But in this season, like he very much consistently gets upgrades. He consistently gets these crazy Ash-like powers, um, which I thought was interesting. But then again, I was like, they're doing absolutely in reverse, absolutely nothing with One Punch Man to make adjustments or for him to learn anything seemingly within this show. He's not like downgrading any of his powers to like have a weaker attack, to make it so that like he can adjust his power to any different kind of like level character, um, or he's trying to adjust to characters that he is not used to battling. Um, like you can have him do some interesting techniques to kind of just adjust to any kind of people, but they didn't do that. Um, I don't know. I think there could have been a number of interesting things that they could have done in this episode. They could have really goofy heroes or really goofy villains. They could have had people that just consistently like believe that they're going to sacrifice themselves, and you could have a hero that is consistently sacrificing, and One Punch Man is just like, no, don't do it. Kind of like in Mandalorian, where you had the one villain that is going to self detonate, and the Mandalorian is like, no, don't do it. We're almost dead. We're almost through all of this. We're almost through all these bounty hunters. He's like, I'm going to self detonate. He's like, no. It's like that would be fun. Have a character that consistently explodes. That would be funny. To consistently have a character that every time One Punch Man comes into a room, it could be a bomb villain that consistently goes up against One Punch Man. That every time One Punch Man comes in a room, um, he freaking explodes, and it's a consistent joke to where like One Punch Man is just like, God, I am running out of clothes. Like it could be a joke about all these things. Have these consistent villains that go up against One Punch Man that are so goofy and maybe very much like slime like. Have fun with it. Have real fun with these villains to go up against One Punch Man. Have it to really be fun to where you consistently have this bajoking thing that you can throw in there to go up against One Punch Man. That would be freaking hilarious. But instead, we have a very dry season. So we have One Punch Man finally going out and fighting crime, and one punches a centipede and annihilates the centipede. Because ultimately, King is mentioning that his arch nemesis Blast is coming to fight him, but it's really just One Punch Man. One Punch Man punches a centipede, completely annihilates the centipede, and basically it like supposedly One Punch Man gets his second wind of just going, you know what, hey, yeah, you know what, I kind of feel differently about all this superhero thing, and you know what, I just kind of feel better about this all. Maybe I just needed that one punch to just kind of get me to just feel differently about everything, because before he was consistently losing in a video game against King for every technique he was trying to do. Like he like would keep losing against King. So like having him lose hundreds and hundreds of times to King ultimately was, I guess, the turning around thing that One Punch Man, I guess, needed, which I thought was just. But anyways, that is kind of the real, true kind of ending of this whole entire season, and like reasonably, it was just kind of interesting to see all these characters kind of come back and how they were gonna how they were gonna add things, how they were gonna like. I really loved the whole Monster Alliance thing and how they had like seemingly so many monsters like crazily going throughout this town. It was so fun to consistently see a lot of heroes and a lot of villains, much more so than the first season. Like it was great to see a combination of heroes and combination of weird and wild heroes and weird wild villains, and it was very interesting to see um, just a crap ton of different ways of like creatures and monsters and stuff like that. I really wish that there could have probably been some kind of like supernatural esh like tie to a monster, or you could have had very much maybe even some kind of like person that maybe we can jokingly have one of those kind of heroes where it's like, oh well, I'm not really truly a hero, but I play one on TV. Ha 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 ha! Like a Johnny Cage kind of hero that kind of comes in and like he thinks that he should just beat villains just because he plays a hero on TV, or ultimately there's like that all stigma of like, oh hey, well he can beat us because like he's Omega or Super Omega. That's just a TV personality thing. Or ultimately, we can kind of go the Tiger and Bunny route where you have consistently people that are like documenting like One Punch Man's like life and consistently watching him and like and he's doing something as simple as like sitting on a couch scratching his head and he's like, are you seriously recording this? And he's like, and they're like 24/7, we're covering everything that you're doing. uh like it could be interesting to have like a reality show in this show, kind of breaking a fourth wall of some kind. um any number of things, like it could be like a very much vastly interesting like if you think that you're going to try and be just like another anime, throw everything and the kitchen sink to make it like not seem like that. It's like if it feels like one kind of anime, do everything. Throw the kitchen sink in there. Like have an entire episode that is just incorporated with just doing one kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I just felt like One Punch Man was disappointing in the season. But I'm gonna get out of here because ultimately I've been talking for over an hour, so I'm gonna get out of here. Bye everybody. Bye everybody.